Just one more mob and... Yes, CP160. I can finally start playing the game. And it only took me... They say when you hit level 50 in the Elder Scrolls Online, you've officially finished the tutorial. And when you hit 160 champion points, well, that's when you can actually start playing the game.
What do we do now? What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game. Oh yeah.
Now, getting to CP160 can take a really long time, but honestly, in ESO, getting to the endgame isn't the chore it is in so many other MMOs. In fact, you can argue that leveling and questing is where you'll find some of the meatiest bits of the game. However, ESO doesn't exactly have the best onboarding experience. So here are 7 tips I wish I knew when I started playing. They're in no particular order, and keep in mind we will have a full series of guides coming in the next couple months where we will elaborate on a lot of these points, so be sure to sub if you want in on those. But for now, let's go number 7. When ZOS released the One Tamriel update, it allowed any player at any level unlimited access to all the story content. Neat, but also bad. Yeah, gatekeeping story behind hundreds of hours of play sucks, and freedom is one of the game's greatest strengths. However, finishing the tutorial only to be thrown into a portal room and get told, have at it, is a little overwhelming. The obscene amount of choice the game presents new players with in their first few minutes of play can very easily result in analysis paralysis, and I legit spent a solid half hour googling where I should start. I eventually realized that kicking it off in my alliance's starting zone would probably be the best. So that's Stros Mackay for the Daggerfall Covenant, Kanathi's Roost for the Aldmeri Dominion, and Bleakrock Isle for the Ebonheart Pact. And in case you're panicking, don't. You'll be able to play all 3 alliance storylines at any time, so don't fret thinking you've made the wrong choice. But if you're coming into ESO for the story and you want a recommendation, I'd say out of the 3 alliances, the Aldmeri Dominion has the strongest story. All the Dominion Zone storylines are far more interconnected than the other 2, plus they have Raz. Kicking off the game in your alliance's starting zone will give you a solid understanding of the 3 Banners War, which acts as a backdrop to the entire game. The Alliance quests will also introduce the threat posed by Mollog Bal, given that his presence underpins most of the base game's storylines. Regardless of which alliance you choose, you'll eventually be dropped off close to the Harborage. That's where you'll start the main storyline, which ties in neatly with the Alliance storylines, as well as the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild. So if you're lost, I recommend focusing on all of that first. Throughout the world, you're gonna see bookshelves everywhere. And I know what you're thinking. What book nerd has time to read when there's a literal war raging on outside? But hold up. The books aren't just for decoration. Reading a book could potentially give you XP for one of the game's many skill trees. You could open up a book and boom, now you know more about woodworking, even though I've never worked any wood in my entire life. Well, I mean, there was this one time at band camp. You may have also spotted one of these bad boys. While serving a dual purpose as a Daedric Nightlight, these are lore books, and reading one will level up your Mages Guild. So unlock the Mages Guild early for that easy passive leveling. Lastly, we have these yellowish guys. These are connected to the zone you're in or the story you're currently playing through. And while they're mostly just for flavor, they can sometimes be needed for quest completion. Now, amazingly, you can actually read all these books. I mean, they have words in them, little stories or someone's last dying thoughts, but reading. This is a tip I really wish I'd followed sooner, so be sure to level all your class abilities, at the very least up to the point where they can be morphed. Why? Well, the only way you're really gonna understand what your character is capable of is by trying out all the abilities. You may be surprised by the skills you end up using and the synergies you discover. You can always go and respec your character at a pretty affordable rate, so when you know which abilities you won't be using, you can go take those points and invest them somewhere else. Now, you're going to see a lot of beginner's guides advising you to have an ability from each of your 3 skill trees on your front bar. That's because just having an ability slotted will level that tree. You don't even have to use the spell. It's also why so many guides will advise you to have an ability from your secondary weapon slotted before you've even unlocked it. Now, these are good tips, just make sure you're not sacrificing fun factor in the name of efficiency. If you find your skill setup boring, change it. Now really, because of this, I don't advise following guides before CP 160. Now whoa, don't click off, I specifically mean build guides. The thing is, before you hit veteran content, ESO is really easy, so a ton of build options will be viable in the early stages. So why not just experiment and have fun? When you do get to CP 160 and you decide to take your character seriously, then find a build that plays into the strengths of the class that you enjoy. I mean, the meta isn't everything. At some point you might actually want to try having fun while playing the game. See, here's my Stamplar. I use a two-handed sword even though all the build guides tell me to use dual daggers for the extra crit. But do you know why I use a two-handed sword over dual daggers? Because swords are cool. Now, this is something I didn't know about for ages, and I'm guessing a lot of you may not know about it either. When using a light attack, the attack registers before the animation finishes. This means that if you use a light attack and then use an ability almost immediately afterwards, it'll cancel the light attack animation and cast the ability. But the damage from the light attack will still go through. The timing is very easy to get right, so just play around with it and find the sweet spot. If you don't do this, you're literally leaving free damage on the floor. And after a while, you won't even think about it, it just becomes second nature. Now, what I feel is the main benefit of the ESO Plus subscription is the crafting bag. Dear God, I cannot believe I played so many hours of this game without it. I can never go back, and yes, this does raise a lot of uncomfortable questions about ZOS manufacturing discontent, but we'll get into that in another video. I personally can't go back, and in fact, I'm scared to. I mean, what happens? Does it delete all my crafting mats if my sub runs out? Are they holding my items hostage? Hold up, I need to know. Oh, well, never mind then. So, when you notice you're starting to run a little low on carrying space, don't sell your items, deconstruct them, even if you're not focusing on that crafting profession. You don't get that much from vendoring off items, and the accumulated stockpile of crafting mats will be incredibly useful further on down the line. Also, your crafting bag is shared between all your characters, so deconstructing something on your main could help your alts. Now, there are some instances where deconstructing an item isn't the best idea, so keep an eye out for the icon next to its name to help you out. This icon means it's ornate and it'll sell for more. This icon means it'll give you more inspiration when deconstructing it, and this means that if you research the item, you can learn its trait. Speaking of which, always be researching. It's something you can have happening in the background, so why not? Besides that, you can sell those ornate items if you want. You won't exactly go Scrooge McDuck, but you'll get far more from it than you would from a regular item. You should also vendor off your poisons. I mean, I'm hundreds of hours into the game and I still have no idea what poisons are good for. I hope the system gets tweaked at some point because frankly, it feels like I'm dousing enemies in dishwater rather than applying a poison. Finally, when you see an item with this icon, you really should deconstruct it. I mean, unless you're wearing it. Don't disassemble your pants. Unless you're trying to express dominance. So this one is advice for me too, because I constantly forget to do this. Level your mount every day you play. It'll take you 180 days to completely level your mount, so settle in for the long haul, and trust me, you don't want to turn those 6 months into a year by forgetting. If you have plans to level a character in the future, maybe make that character now, take them to a stable master and log them in every time you play to level their mount skill in advance. So when you do play that character, you're not traveling with the Snail Brigade. And of course, don't forget to unlock the continuous attack passive that'll give you a permanent 30% speed boost to your mount for the price of 1 skill point. And finally, here's a weird one that I just don't see mentioned anywhere. But I'm gonna have to preface that this tip only works on PC and you may also take a performance hit. But if your PC can handle it, I strongly recommend doing this. So, have you noticed that when you see another player, it can take a few seconds for their textures to load? It's especially noticeable in populated areas. I mean, you can't really miss it. Most cities are like a low-res zombie apocalypse. Visual progression is so important to an MMO, but you just don't fully appreciate what you're progressing towards unless you can actually see how cool higher level players look. So, head to your Documents folder, Elder Scrolls Online, Live, and look for usersettings.txt. Save a copy of this file somewhere just in case you screw up, and open her up. Navigate to set MIP_load_skip_levels and change the value from 0 to -3. If it works, and it most certainly will, the texture pop-in on player characters should be solved. And there you have it, my top 7 tips I wish I knew before I started playing ESO. I really didn't know any of this before I started playing, and I feel like I would have had a way easier and more pleasant time if I did. Got any essential tips of your own? Drop them in the comments and I'll see about adding them to a future list. As I said at the beginning of this video, we'll be releasing a series of ESO guides, so this is just a jumping off point. Drop a like and sub if you like our content, and hit the bell if you want to be notified when we upload. Unless YouTube decides to stop showing my videos to subscribers again. Why don't you love me?